Men, and as usual, I use the term loosely. Hey, IronHeadCycle bought a new milling machine. This is a Smithy, as you can see, MI-409MZ. I got this for several reasons. I'll go into that later. But it was, of course, made in China, okay? I would prefer not to have bought this. I would have preferred to have bought something else like a real Bridgeport, but I just don't have space or ability to move it around on my property to get out where it needs to be. This is a little more manageable, but it has some issues, as you might suspect from having been made in China. I'm showing you this first, and this may be all there is of this video, depending on how ambitious I get today. It's got this essentially a digital caliper, which is attached to the quill with a hole over here that was stripped out, which is why it's not hooked up right now. And speaking of stripped out holes, they use these 5 by 0.8 millimeter screws on everything. The threads are very fine. Fully half of them were fucking stripped out. I had to retap almost all of them, and I'm putting longer screws in to catch threads at the bottom of the hole. But anyway, this thing here is a pretty simple thing, except it barely slides up and down. And I thought, what's up with that? There's got to be an explanation. So let's pop this cover off, and I'll show you what I found. I'm just trying to recreate here what was going on. And see, stripped out screws. Here's one right here. This son of a bitch doesn't even catch a thread. We're going to fix that too. But let's pop the cover off, and I'll show you what I'm talking about. Oh, and by the way, this screw over here, pay attention to this one. Notice how it's not flush. It doesn't even screw down all the way, okay? Okay, so here it is with the cover off of the digital readout. And it slides up nice and smoothly. So obviously the cover was interfering with the operation of this gadget. Well, you come around here on the side, and there's a big gap, well, relatively big gap, like 60-80 thousandths of an inch, between the digital readout mechanism or electronics and the base of the fucking mill head over here. So let's pull this off. Let me show you what I found. This is so fucked up. It's really almost humorous. So this digital readout was installed over these two holes over here, okay? And I had assumed that the radius of this bend was getting up on the corner and wouldn't let it drop in all the way. What I found was this. They got a slot over here, a machine for this thing, and if you put it in the slot, it fucking fits perfect. Look how far out of whack the holes are with the slot. You got one job. Drill 2 holes in this mill head so you could screw this thing on. Jesus Christ. You know, what were they doing? Was the blueprint in you know, inches, and they were working in metric? They screwed the conversion up. Was the guy blind that day? Was he drunk that day? Come on, where's the quality? Give me a little bit of quality control. Jesus Christ. So anyway, easy enough to fix. I'm going to drill a couple of holes in there. I'm going to call them up. I'm going to bitch, and I can't see if I could wangle some, you know, free end cutters out of them or something, end mills out of them. But good Lord. Here's where it was. Here's where it's supposed to be. Come on, guys. Get it together. Okay. Look at what else these cheeseheads did. No offense to you Packer fans, but this is a cheesehead thing. There's a little cover plate over here. There's a screw that goes in this way. There's a clamp for these couple of wires. The screw goes in this way. And then here's that screw that was hanging out of the cover that won't go in all the way. Gee, I wonder why not. Because there's 2 screws at the bottom of the hole. What the fuck? What the fuck were they thinking? Idiots. And then you go around over here. Here's where the DRO for the quill was located. And here's the old holes. Here's the holes that I just drilled and retapped. Notice how far off they are. Frankly, I'm glad they're that far off because they gave me plenty of room to tap new holes without overlapping the existing holes. So we're going to put the cover on. Everything should be good. Okay, this whole thing with the cover and the screws started because this was binding up. This now works very nicely, very smoothly. Very happy with that. Anyway, it started with this thing because when it came, this linkage was all cockamamie and screwed over, and obviously there was something not right about it, and the scale would not slide up and down. Now the last problem is this. The scale has an adjustment slot in it that goes this way, and the attachment to the quill has an adjustment that goes this way. These two holes should be lined up with one another, and you can see they're off. So I can't put a screw in to attach these two things together. You know, when will it ever end? You know, you Chinese business slave drivers, when a worker comes to you down the assembly line and says, hey, this shit doesn't fit, don't flog the guy. Don't deprive him of his daily fish head or whatever the hell it is he's having for lunch. You know, address the problem seriously. Obviously, there's a production problem with the way they're laying these things out and the way they're drilling the holes and all that. So I'm going to take this little doodad off, probably get a Dremel tool and and biggen the hole so that it intersects with this slot nicely, so I can finally get this thing together. You know, none of these problems are insurmountable, but Jesus Christ, I got 2-3 hours, maybe 4 hours of dicking around, you know, and every time you fix one thing and you get it set up, then you go, oh shit, there's something else that isn't quite working right. Anyway, we'll pull this off, make the slot a little bigger so that it, move it over this way so that it'll line up with the vertical slot. Fuck. Anyway, let's go take care of that. I remember a little while ago I thought I was done with this. Not quite. Put it all together, tried it out a few times, and what I found out was that the bottom of the DRO was sticking out a little bit past the bottom of the mill head. What was happening was the little bracket for the DRO was hitting the DRO before the rubber donut for the mill stop was hitting the bottom of the mill head. So I remade the bracket that's in here. The way the holes were on the other one, they overlapped, there was a slot in the wrong spot. Anyway, I just made a new bracket over here. Now it is perfect. It runs up and down smoothly. It works. You know, for kind of a cheesy arrangement, that really works pretty nice. Anyway, the mill is running. It works. Very happy with it. I got a few wipers to put back in, some details to take care of. But I think this is going to serve me nicely over the years. Kind of a pain in the ass getting it all together, but it is back all together, like I say, minus some wipers and some chip shields and that kind of stuff. I'm going to have to tram the mill head in. But other than that, it's looking pretty good. I did have a couple loose wires in this rat's nest that I found. Cheesy connectors on this thing. Cheesy, cheap buttons on it. But anyway, it worked. Okay, well, here it is the next day. The machine is all together. It's all cleaned up. It's ready to go. I've been playing with some of the functions on it, trying to learn how to work them. Just a little bit ago, I just got done tramming the mill head in. Came up with very good results, and I'm very happy. For all intents and purposes, it's zero. Over 6 inches, maybe a couple of 10,000ths, but really pretty much zero. Anyway, I was playing with the tapping function, And the tapping function is something that I really want to work on this thing, because every once in a while I make something that's got a bunch of holes in it, and it's, you know, really tiresome trying to, you know, turn a tap through 10 or 15 holes in steel by hand. So I wanted the tapping function to work. Anyway, I was playing with it. I didn't have a piece of steel on there, but I was just, you know, familiarizing myself with the operation. And it seemed like it was working backwards. It was going forward when it should be going reverse. It'd get to the bottom and it's supposed to reverse, and it just wasn't working right. And I pulled the faceplate cover off, and these two limit switches, this guy here and this guy here, control the motor and the direction for tapping. And I looked at it, I thought, you know, these son of bitches look like they're on there backwards. So I went to the wiring diagram that comes in the cheesy manual they give you, and the print is so illegible it's just about totally useless. So I went to the online version of the manual, hoping it would be clearer, and it isn't. It's still basically useless. But anyway, I printed up, I blew up the part that I needed, and you could just barely make out. I'm sure on the camera you can't read how, you can't tell how shitty it is. But I could see that this says upper micro switch, and I could see that this one down here says lower micro switch. And I could see that this one has 3 wires on it. Here's my upper micro switch, 1, 2 wires. And here's my lower micro switch, 1, 2 wires, 1, 2, 3 wires. So obviously this is fucked up. I'm going to reverse this wiring and see if I can't get the tapping function to work correctly. Okay, let's back up a little bit with my wiring difficulties. When I bought this machine, it was wired for 110. The building that it's in has 220, so I wanted to wire it up to 220. I got a hold of their salesman and their tech guy, and they sent me this diagram. I wired it up per the diagram as best I could. My problem was, in this diagram, the wires are identified with wire numbers. The wires that were, actually the wires that were inside here in the motor junction box, they didn't have wire numbers on them. So I was trying to make my best guess as how they were connected. So these are the wires on the motor, and these are the wires from the relay to the motor. Well, you get over here and it says 4 wires to motor, and it doesn't show you where they're hooked up on the motor. Then you look over here and it shows you where they're hooked up on a motor, but it doesn't show you where they're hooked up on a relay. The wires that were in the machine are color-coded. There's no color codes on here, nor were there any tags. So it's impossible to tell where these 4 wires get connected to the control circuit. Very frustrating. But anyway, figured it out eventually. Wired it up, motor ran backwards. Got a hold of their tech guy again, and he sends me this hand-drawn thing. Swap these two if the machine runs backwards. Well, mine ran backwards. Like I say, I kind of figured out which was which on here. Swap these 2 wire around, and everything was good. Wiring problem solved. Very happy with that. Okay, so let's do like kind of a final overview of this thing. This is the control box. The wiring in here, they used, the wires are all red. They have tags on them with numbers on them for the most part. They used the cheapest crimp-on terminals I've ever seen. I ended up changing the terminals on the switches to aircraft quality crimp-on terminals. Very happy with that. You know, kind of tedious, kind of a pain in the butt, but I'm much happier with it. I think it'll do wonders for longevity. I did find several loose wires inside here. I mean, a couple of them I just pulled on them just slightly, and they came out of the terminal they were screwed onto. So not a good thing. So that was a problem. Screws. Many of the screws were stripped out. They use these little short 5mm screws, little tiny short things. They're only catching 3 or 4, maybe 5 threads. So I ended up running a drill bit in these holes to, you know, clean them up and see how deep I could get them without hitting anything. And I retapped them and got longer screws, put them in, and fortunately I was able to catch enough threads towards the bottom of the hole that everything tightened up on there. This problem, y'all know about, went into that and you saw what happened. The other problem I ran into is at various places, like for example right here, there's a bracket that holds this guard on, and this bracket covers the adjusting gib. The machine has tapered gibs, which is a nice feature, so there's a screw here and there's a screw up here. You tighten one, loosen the other one, and you move your tapered gib up and down to get it where you want it. Well, the bracket over here covered the gib, so you can't adjust. You couldn't adjust the gib without taking a bracket off. Well, and the gib hangs out. The adjustment screw for the gib hangs out a little bit, so I had to file a half round notch in this bracket in order to get it to fit around the adjusting screw. Same thing over here. This is the retainer for the way wiper. The hole for this gib adjusting screw didn't line up with the adjusting screw. So this hole has now been ovalized to accommodate the screw, because otherwise the retainer wouldn't fit over it. The retainer itself looked like it had been carved out of a piece of steel by an angry beaver who was chewing on it. I swear to God. You know, I had to clean up all the edges with the file, straighten them all out. You know, not too big of a deal, but once again, something, you know, why should you have to mess with that? The retainer actually rubbed on the ways, so I had to file that down to get clearance. This is the limit switches for the power feed, and there has to be a notch in the retainer for the bracket to fit. There wasn't a notch. I had to cut a notch into it. You know, not a big deal, but just, you know, geez, why should I have to do that on this thing? Anyway, got it all straightened out, pitched a bitch, and to Smithy's credit, they ended up giving me a over $700 DRO for half price to compensate me for my aggravation. I'm happy with that. I think it's fair enough. Anyway, I'm happy with that. I wanted a DRO for this anyway and was planning on getting one. To be able to get one for half price, and supposedly it's a good one. We'll see how it works out when I get in here and set it up. And let me go into one other little thing here, which actually I thought was the most humorous problem that I have with the machine. They give you this wrench, this combination wrench, one end 24 millimeters, the other end 22 millimeters. And the only nuts and bolts on the machine that I could find that are close to that size are these nuts for rotating the mill head around. This is the 24, and you can see it's really sloppy on there. Here's the 22, and it doesn't go on at all. And the reason for that is because it is actually 23 millimeters. They couldn't even get the size of the fucking wrench correct. Unbelievable. But anyway, I have a 23 millimeter wrench, so I'm happy. But, I mean, come on, guys. You know, as it's going down the assembly line, is a guy grabbing his 24 millimeter wrench and sticking it on there? Come on. Seriously? You couldn't get the size of the wrench correct? Jeez Louise. This machine was kind of expensive. The price just went up. If you look on our website now, the price now is significantly higher than what I paid for this back in July. COVID, shipping, who knows what. There are other machines that are similar, but and much cheaper. But the similar machines fall short, at least as far as I'm concerned, for some reasons. Number one, a lot of the similar machines are round column mills. And if you've ever used a round column mill, you know what the problem is. As soon as you've got to raise or lower the mill head, you've lost your alignment with the workpiece underneath it. You've lost your alignment with the workpiece underneath it, and it's very difficult to get it back. So your setup time goes up tremendously, especially if you've got to change tools, and you know, some of the tooling is too long to fit in the area you have underneath there to work. It really gets to be a pain in the butt. This is a square column mill. It's got ways and gibs on it. I could raise and lower the mill head and maintain alignment with my workpiece, which for me is very important. So square column is a very important thing. The second thing is this mill table is relatively huge. I believe it's 40 inches or thereabouts, and it's got about 40 inches of horizontal back and forth. Inevitably, on the 3-in-1 combo Smithy I'm using, you know, the back and forth on that one is only about 7 inches. And everything I had a mill needed more than 7 inches of back and forth on it. This table is big enough that I could lay a Sportster crankcase on it and lock it down. Very handy. I've already done some milling on a crankcase, just kind of light feeling out how the machine is going to work. And so far I like it quite a bit. The up and down on the a quill is very precise. You know, the increments actually are correct. There's very little free play in this thing, so there's not a lot of guessing involved. Now that I've got the wiring straightened out, the power tapping feature works great. I can run it in reverse. It's great. The other thing this machine has that many similar ones have is it's got a power feed on it, which is very handy. It's a long mill table, and if you've got to crank this thing, you know, back and forth by hand, you'll be cranking a long time. Much easier to hit the power feed, and away you go on it. Okay, I've spent the last 20 minutes or thereabouts bashing the Smithy company and you know, shortfalls on the quality control in this machine. Let me say a few good things about them now. And the final thing I'll say about Smithy is this. One of the reasons I like the Smithy company is because, generally speaking, you could get a hold of a human being without a lot of problems. So having run into all this niggling little BS stuff, you know, they had to get fixed. I was able to get a hold of the salesmen and their tech guys. I pitched a bitch. They ended up giving me a new DRO for half price. The DRO isn't here yet, but I'm going to install it shortly. You know, you go to any of these other no-name Chinese ones, and the chances are you're not going to get a hold of a person. You're going to get no help whatsoever, or very little help. This is the third Smithy machine I've owned. I bought a used lathe off of eBay, I don't know, 10, 15 years ago. It was pretty much a run-out sack of shit by the time I got it. I got rid of that machine a while back, several years ago. I bought this 3-in-1, and this is a much better lathe than it is a mill. You know, here's the mill head swung out of the way. A much better lathe than it is a mill. The quality overall on this one, as far as fit and finish of the, you know, various bits and pieces, is better than the fit and finish on this new one. So this mill is the third Smithy product I've owned, and you know, I bought it primarily because you know, they have a U.S.-based headquarters. You could get a hold of a service guy. You could get information, although it's a little hard to pry some of it out of them. But at least they have tech support in the United States. You could talk to a guy who could lead you down the path you need to go. And the people I've talked to at Smithy really seem to know their machinery. I've been very happy with their tech support. Although the last go-arounds with this machine, it was a little harder to get a hold of somebody than it has been previously. And I could only assume that's on account of the COVID and stay at home. And, you know, it seems like maybe they've reduced some employees around there. But still, you could get a hold of a guy when you need to get a hold of a guy within a day or two, and they could get you straightened out. Would I buy this again? I probably would, because it still is the only machine around this price range that fits the needs that I have. And so I probably would get it again. Anyway, that's the end of this story. The production quality of this video isn't necessarily what I would have liked it to have been. You know, I did it with a handheld GoPro. I wasn't planning on making a video, but I started running into problems, so I thought, oh, geez, I want to, you know, get some documentation on it. Anyway, I am out of here. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe. Catch you next time. Bye.